Welcome back, and thank you for joining for another one of Mike and Billy's Whiskey Reviews. Today, we're going to get back to some bourbons, some Kentucky straight bourbons, and one that has been getting a lot of attention, at least among some of my friends and some of my fellow reviewers, is the Weller Antique 107. It's the first Weller I'm going to bring you. I've had a couple of them in the past. There's some good bourbons. I'll make a concerted effort to bring you a few more of them. The Weller is a Kentucky straight bourbon, but it's a wheated whiskey, meaning I believe bourbon, it has to be 51% corn, where the other components can be a couple different other things, barley, some other things, but this one actually has wheat in it, which is supposed to give it a little bit of a sweeter taste. So to tell you a little bit about Weller, they are part of Buffalo Trace. If any of you are familiar with like the Pappy Van Winkles or the Rip Van Winkle series, it's the same distillery. As a matter of fact, the mash mill for the Pappy Van Winkle, or excuse me, the Rip Van Winkle 10 and this Weller Antique 107 are actually the exact same as far as the mixture. Now, they probably go into different casks, and they're definitely aged a different amount of time. The Rip Van Winkle is a 10-year-old age statement, where this does not have an age statement, but from what I was able to read, it's anywhere from 6 to 7-year-old whiskey. So again, Distilleries Buffalo Trace. It's distributed here locally in Columbus by an organization called Sazerac, which also brings us like Glenfarclas and a couple of other scotches. I think they're based out of New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, this particular Weller should have some similar profiles or some similarities to the Rip Van Winkle 10. Now, we did the Rip Van Winkle 10 in review, I don't know, 90 something, I believe, 80, high 80s, low 90s, and I said then it was an overrated whiskey. So just because that's a really big name, Rip Van Winkle, 10-year-old, I thought it was a mediocre whiskey. This is a little bit younger of a whiskey. So I guess we'll see kind of where this comes in at. This whiskey retails, though, for a really reasonable price. I believe it was around $25, $28, something like that, here locally in Columbus. I was fortunate enough to get the rest of this bottle from a good friend, Keith, at the Malted Man Cave. But this is a whiskey I've had before. I've seen him around here in Columbus. My boss, who's a big bourbon guy, it's one that I've had with him, and he probably is a guy who has 50 or 60 different bourbons. So, it doesn't put it in his top ring of great bourbons, but, it's something that he's definitely tried and definitely purchased in the past. So a little bit about the details. This is 53.5% ABV or 107 proof, hence the name of 107. So let me tell you what I think about it. On the nose, it's sweet like a bourbon, but there's a different like sweetness. It's a lot of vanilla initially. And I will say, when Keith initially gave me this bottle, it was about half full, and the nose was a little sharper. As a matter of fact, I put off reviewing this for about 6 weeks and had about a third of the whiskey in the bottle just to let it soften up a bit, because initially it was a bit alcohol forward, both on the nose and the palate. But I gotta tell you, after a little bit of time with the air hitting the bottle, it's a different experience. Yeah, you get that caramel and that honey caramel, vanilla, but it's a really, really sweet vanilla compared to most bourbons. Think vanilla icing, or even vanilla ice cream. You guys work out, there's a protein powder that's called Optimum Nutrition, Gold Standard Whey. It's like the most popular one. They have this vanilla ice cream, and I tell you what, you put a little bit of 2% milk in your protein shake and that ice cream from Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard Whey, it is so good. It's almost like a treat. I get a little bit of that smell in this. It's just like vanilla ice cream or vanilla icing. It's a really nice, sweet, almost white chocolatey smell to it. Other than that, it's honey and caramel. Your typical bourbon stuff. But again, very harsh initially when I first got the bottle, when it hadn't been open very long, but really, really mellowed out extremely nice with, about a month and a half with air hitting about half the bottle. All right, I'm gonna take a sip. Wow. A little more oaky on the palate as compared to the nose. And I'm getting dark fruits. Plum comes to mind, like a really ripe plum, like the skin of the plum, and more char and more oak. Wow. For as light as it was on the nose, on the palate, it had a lot of punch to it. And now at the end, I mean, it's just kind of settling like a nice little woody note. Like you really get a lot of that barrel characteristic off this in the aftertaste and the linger, which is nice. Because at first it was just hot. This is another example of, you know, a lot of times I found that young scotches and bourbons, you give them a little bit of time with about half the bottle, or say 2/3 the bottle open for a month or so, they really kind of soften up and come alive. At least from my experience. All right, little taste with water, see what we're doing. Boy, with water, that plum is just instantly on the palate. I mean, yeah, after you swallow, there's a little bit of that caramel and a little bit of that vanilla on the side of your palate, but man, instantly you get like really dark plum, which it's almost like a flavored whiskey. It's really that strong, which is unique. I've never really had that plum taste so predominant in the taste of a whiskey before, but it's enjoyable, that's for sure. The finish is medium. You know, a lot of times with some of these bourbons, the finish is a bit snappy compared to single malt scotches. For me, the scotches are drier and it just kind of lingers a little bit more, but this one has a really nice woody, oaky finish that kind of just takes you home with the whiskey. You know, I think it's good whiskey. It's absolutely a buy for $25, $26, $27. I know a lot of people have a really high opinion of this whiskey. I mean, I don't think it's a mind-blowing whiskey by any stretch of the imagination. Again, I think for the money, it's well worth it. And, you know, even if you don't like it, it's a $28 bottle of liquor. But, you know, if I had to give this a score, I mean, it's an average whiskey. I mean, 85 out of 100 maybe. You know, I always hate to use my same score system on the bourbons as I do the scotches. But, you know, I would say this is a whiskey that, again, for the money, makes a lot of sense. I don't know if I'd go seek it out at the bar. You know, if I had a choice of 20 whiskeys, if I had, you know, a Blanton's available to me or something like that, or an E.H. Taylor or even a Basil Hayden, I'd probably go with that over this Weller. I might be in the minority as far as that, because I know a lot of people are very fond of this whiskey, but that's just my opinion. Maybe it's a bit too sweet for me, but again, I understand that that's what we're trying to do with the wheated whiskeys. I mean, I do like the sweetness, but it's a very sweet caramel. It's a very sweet vanilla. Just overall, just a very sweet experience, which I kind of find bourbons a bit too sweet to begin with. This is a very sweet bourbon. So anyway, that's just my opinion. I mean, I think it's a solid whiskey. Definitely enjoyed it. Definitely will have this bottle around and continue to share with people and see what they think. But just another guy's opinion on what we thought it was. I want to thank you for joining for another one of Mike and Billy's whiskey reviews. Actually saw Billy yesterday. This is wedding season for him. He's going out of town this weekend and next weekend to be in a couple of weddings. Sometimes I think as many weddings as that guy goes to. He was the Will Ferrell in the movie Wedding Crashers, the guy who just shows up to a bunch of weddings when it's the season. And it is the season. You know, late summer, early fall, at least around here in Columbus, Ohio, there's a lot of weddings. So he sends his love, and we'll be doing some whiskey reviews here soon. But until then, I want to thank you for joining. And until next time, I will see you in the comment section.